Welcome back. I'm Samuel Sadler here with Miriam Marsh of Empower. Welcome.
Thank you, Sam.
Yes, ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you here. Miriam is an incredibly brilliant woman. I have read a lot of her papers, seen a lot of your work on the internet, and it just blows me away. Not only the thought patterns that you have, but you're also a forward thinker in your industry. The industry being, she is a CT-PAT certifier as well as being certified. And she also works with the border protection and making sure that everything coming into our country is safe. And we sure appreciate what you do there.
Thank you.
She speaks way over my head a lot of the times. She's speaking in her seminars. And like I say, it's an honor having you here. But if you'll please, speak on a level that all the other business folks in the room can understand, because we're not all in your industry. But if you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your background. I know you've been in the industry for 14 years.
Correct.
Yes, which is very, very impressive, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. But if you could tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get into your event that's coming on up that we want to talk about.
All right, thank you. Well, as you said, my job is to make sure that everything that comes into this country with the companies that I work with, that they are safe. And some of the things that we keep safe or that we're looking at as far as threats is smuggling of guns, smuggling of humans, possibility of someone putting bombs or something on cargo, and basically that's it. We just make sure that our security practices are up to speed and up to date, and that they're constantly evolving to keep up with some of the threats that are out there.
Okay, interesting. Now, I'm seeing some looks in the audience, about when you said running guns and humans, and
Right.
just some of the interesting terminology that you have there. As far as of recent, are there any situations that you could tell us about where something was stopped? Is there anything, any of the old war stories that you could tell us about something that had happened at the border to where our systems that are in place have really worked out?
Yes, and actually these situations come up quite frequently. To the average person or the average business, a lot of times they're not aware of it. It totally goes over the radar. But what we've done is we've implemented some security practices as far as inspecting trailers. So every time a trailer pulls up the dock, we check it completely. It's called an 18-point inspection. And so essentially we're checking the trailer from top to bottom for any places or areas where things can be put in or smuggled or hidden. Sometimes they come in with what is called a false wall. And so you have your typical 53-foot trailer, or sometimes a 20-foot trailer, but a small section of it, they'll build a wall just enough to where you can hide or something on the back of it. Sometimes we find guns, sometimes we find people, sometimes we find drugs. And really that's how you catch it, is just doing the inspection. And like I said, it happens quite frequently. We usually see at least, just with the companies that we work with, at least 2 or 3 incidents a week.
Wow. That's incredible. I had no idea. I thought it'd be a really isolated incident.
Oh, no. In fact, I think it's safe to say that the biggest problem that I see is usually with drugs. Weapons would probably be second, and then people would be third. But we have seen people hidden in compartments, sometimes underneath the cabin where the drivers sleep. So I never get to the point to find out why they were there or why they were trying to get over on the other side. Usually it's family members, or they're just trying to come over to find a better life or so. But yeah, they're there.
Interesting. Crazy stories. Well, how long does that typically take when, say, a truck gets pulled over and they're inspected? How long does that inspection process take on maybe a 53-foot trailer?
Well, there's 2 different types of inspections. The first one is when you pull up to the dock at the actual warehouse. So while it's being loaded, we have a team of people that go out and inspect it, which usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, these people are professionals. They know exactly what they're doing, what to look for. So it doesn't take that long. In fact, it takes longer to load the trailer than it does to do the inspection. Now, if you happen to be driving and you're pulled over by an agency, like say Customs or some type of law enforcement, whether local or state, it depends on how well versed they are. So they may do it quickly with just a quick look over, 5 minutes. It may take a little bit longer. They may even confiscate the trailer for a couple of days. It depends.
Wow. A couple of days, that can really hurt if somebody has a rush order on some of the freight or something.
Oh, absolutely. That's why when we're working with our clients, we always let them know exactly what types of things they can expect, so that way they're already prepared. And like you were saying, they don't have their freight sitting in a warehouse somewhere waiting to be inspected because something was flagged.
Mhm.
So we try to be very proactive about that, and it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Now, when you're talking about proactive, I know that you had mentioned that you're CTPAT certified, and is there a way for the freight companies to get that certification as well? And if so, how does that help them in that situation?
Yes, most of the freight companies, it is possible for them to be CTPAT certified. Actually, CTPAT stands for Customs and Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. And this was implemented after 9/11, as you can imagine. Basically, all freight around the country, anything that was being shipped, not just cargo, but also people, it just came to a complete halt. And as you were saying earlier with the scenario of the truck, it costs millions and millions of dollars to have that freight just sitting there on a U.S. level. So what they did, Customs did, was they came up with this program. It's volunteer right now, so it's not mandatory. Basically what you're doing is you're making an agreement with Customs that you're going to do everything within your power to make sure that your freight and your facilities are secure. Customs will come out, inspect, make sure that everything that you said on your paperwork is true and correct, and then they certify you. What happens with a certification is if we ever have another terrorist event in the future, the ones that are CTPAT certified will be allowed to continue their journeys, whereas if you're not CTPAT certified, you're probably going to get held up for a lot of inspections.
Okay. And then with the CTPAT certification, we talked about the freight lines, that it would be advantageous for them to be CTPAT certified. Is there anybody else that would be advantageous for them to be CTPAT certified as well?
Oh, absolutely. For manufacturing facilities, for instance, anybody that's importing or exporting, it makes them more marketable just because one of the requirements for CTPAT is you can only do business with another company that's either CTPAT certified or they have to demonstrate that they have the same level of security practices. So for instance, if I have a major corporation, a contract with like a General Electric or an IBM, as a supplier to them, if it comes down between me and a competitor, and my competitor is CTPAT certified and I'm not, the chances of me getting that contract are slim to none. They're probably going to go with the competitor just because they know that they're safe and they've done their due diligence. So it becomes a marketing strategy.
Okay. You could actually run an entire, because I'm a marketing guy, you could actually run an entire marketing campaign based on that if you see that that's a gap in your industry to where your competition is not CTPAT certified.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, I would. And how long does that process take to become certified?
The process takes approximately a month. Once you submit the paperwork, it all starts once you submit the application. The application is pretty lengthy in and of itself. Not only is it a matter of just filling in lines and answering questions, but it's also a matter of having procedures and policies in place within your facility. So if you don't have any processes and procedures, it might take a little bit longer because now you have to implement things, train your employees, et cetera, et cetera. But once you have all that, once you submit the application, it takes about 3 or 4 weeks for Customs to look over everything and get back to you. If everything looks good, they will give you certification, and then within a certain amount of time, they will come out and do the physical inspection. If you pass that inspection, then you're certified. If you don't pass it, usually they give you some time, 30 days to fix the problem. They come back out, look at it again. If everything looks good, you're clear. If not, then you don't get the certification. But one of the mistakes that a lot of companies make is they think that it's just an application process. So yes, filling out the application is easy. It's a matter of reflecting and demonstrating that you're doing everything from a physical perspective that you have on your application.
And Miriam, what do you think the top 3 areas are where companies are really seeing security breaches?
The very first one is from a technological perspective. And this is another area that companies are not very well versed in. Some are not even aware that it exists. But there's a lot of intelligence work that goes on with the security agencies from other countries that are literally tapping into our computers and trying to find out our trade secrets and what we're building and what we're coming up with. So a lot of the times they'll either have people on the inside who are working to get them this intelligence, or they create these Trojans and other viruses and things like that to get into the computer systems. Now a lot of times these companies have no idea that they've even been hacked until it's too late, or until something happens and they're saying, wait a minute, that's our prototype, or why has it already been released? That kind of thing. So it's incredibly important for companies to understand that no matter what you might think, well, I don't really build anything, or I'm not really doing anything that would attract any spies or anything like that, but it doesn't matter. They may be trying to get to one of your service providers. They might be trying to get to one of your suppliers. You never know. They will definitely use you. So far, our biggest incident rate is actually from China, and number 2 would be the Soviet Union. So that would be the first one. The second one is false companies. Now that's a very big danger, and that's where companies start to do business, where legitimate companies start to do business with other companies that have been set up to look like they're legitimate, but they're actually being funded or run for specific reasons. And sometimes these specific reasons can be to confiscate money, to launder money, to bring in weapons or even mass destruction elements. And I have seen a lot of times where people will contract, especially with freight companies, to move their freight, and then the freight goes missing because they didn't do their due diligence to make sure that this freight company was actually legitimate. That happens quite a bit.
And I'm going to go ahead and interject right there, Miriam. A lot of our clients buy competitive intelligence packages from us,
Okay.
to where we do a lot of competitive intelligence about their competitors.
Yes.
And I mean, all the executives that have seen our packages know that we can come back with a stack of information this thick, of CDs and paper and sales presentations and all their inner workings, pricing. All the sensitive information is very easy to get.
Exactly.
And just even on a competitive side, you don't want that released, and you do want to have an education for your employees, even a meeting within your company, explaining to people how important it is that they protect this intellectual property.
Absolutely.
Secondly, the training that you're talking about, to where they know, okay, all of a sudden this freight company is way cheaper than the rest of them. What is going on? I mean, there have to be some red flags that come up there.
There are red flags, and usually if you're checking their licensing and things like that, usually it's fairly new, meaning they haven't been in business very long. And I'm not saying that to discredit any new businesses that are, but that's something that you should look into a little bit further. If they are fairly new, it's not a bad idea to get references or the names of other companies that they've actually worked for, and not just stop there, but actually talk to these references and make sure that they really are legitimate.
That's a lot. I mean, I look at the typical dispatch guy, sitting behind the glass with his radio and his phone, and I can't see him going through, this type of background checks, if you will, on companies. I think that this does have to come down from the executives down.
Exactly.
And really tell him how to be able to take care of him, to watch over his little area.
Yes, and most of the time it won't be dispatching or anybody working on the dock or anything like that does that. Usually that would come from corporate. Somebody corporate should be doing these background checks. They should be checking. There are websites out there, like Customs and Border Protection has one where you can check certain companies to see if they are legitimate. So there's resources out there. It's just a matter of using them. And I mean, I think some of us get to the point where if it looks good, then it should be good, rather than actually taking the time to figure out who are these people really, and what is it that they want from us if they're not legitimate. And I have run into cases like that, so it's not uncommon.
What a great resource. And I apologize for getting you off track a little bit there, but
No problem.
especially with the people that are watching this are all executives, and most of them have seen our competitive intelligence packages, and that information has to come from somewhere.
Absolutely.
And it comes from weaknesses in security. It comes from lack of communication to your employees on
Right.
how to protect your sensitive information.
Yes.
And if we can get it, then that means that somebody else can get it as
Exactly.
well.
Yes.
So I apologize for interrupting you. So we have information, is one of the top three problems that they have. What are, you want to either continue to expound on that or go over the other two weaknesses?
Yeah, let's go over the other two. The other
Mhm.
one was, we call them Trojan companies because they're not set up for legitimate purposes. Usually there's some kind of criminal intent going on in the background. And then the last one is, a lot of times, not only freight companies, but any legitimate company that's doing any type of importing, exporting, or even movement of freight, they are the ones who are going to be targeted by terrorist organizations to smuggle the items that we just talked about earlier, which was weapons, humans, or drugs. So those would be the top three.
Wow. I'm just amazed at how vulnerable and such a high risk.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I was doing a study not long ago, and we found out that only about 10% of the companies in the United States practice some type of security procedures and processes, which was really scary because then that says that 90% are completely vulnerable and open to any type of attack, whether it's from a disaster perspective, natural disaster, or even a man-made disaster. So it's pretty enlightening.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really piquing my interest, what really motivated you to get into this and to start educating people on this? I mean, there had to be some sort of a trigger event, if you may, or something that really sparked your interest in it. What was it that brought you into this?
Well, I'll tell you, it started out, like we were saying, 14 years ago. I started out importing and exporting, just a typical job, didn't really think much about it. But as I got into the process, I started figuring out that there was a lot of things that people could do to be more proactive, to be able to move their product a lot easier than what we were seeing. There was things getting hung up in customs, shipments being pulled over for inspection, and usually it was small things, but it's just a lack of awareness. Companies just didn't know. And so I just saw that they were spending a lot of money trying to correct problems after the fact rather than if they caught them before it got to that point. From then I started going into the cargo security side of it because unfortunately we were seeing a lot of incidents, especially along the border. And that kind of opened my eyes to some of the things that were going on. And a lot of times law enforcement, they themselves weren't aware, which I know it's not far-fetched, it's just cargo is not one of their specialties that they deal with. So unless you actually report something stolen, which doesn't happen very often, then they're not too keen or too aware on how to handle those situations. And then I started doing my PhD program, and that's where the study and the research came in. And now that I know that we are vulnerable to all these different types of terrorist attacks, that's kind of what started the ball rolling, is when I saw that statistic that I told you about, the 10% of companies are actually prepared. That's what piqued my interest. Just because anytime there's a disaster or a terrorist event, it cripples the economy. It hurts people, things shut down, jobs go away, and and that's just the economic impact. We're not even talking about the emotional or the psychological impact that goes along with it. And so I felt that with all the knowledge and experience that I've gained over the years, this is something that could be used for that, to help people better prepare. And then the better prepared you are, the better chance you have of recovering from whatever you're experiencing.
So from an altruistic and American standpoint, I know that there are a lot of freight companies that are watching. Get CTPAT certified.
Absolutely.
And educate your people. On many different fronts. On the front of the business side, if you get CTPAT certified, then market it and advertise it and let people know that you're CTPAT certified and that you're active about this, and help to raise that awareness on the other end, because I can see that it'll help you to monetize and to gain profitability on that side. I know that one of the huge problems is commoditization.
Yes.
They go, oh well, this LTL carrier charges 50 cents a pound or whatnot for shipping class 50 freight. I know that price is way off, folks, so don't catch me on that. But at any rate, they have a certain price point for the class 50 freight.
Right.
And it becomes across the board. They're like, well, they call it the next guy. Well, he's 1 cent cheaper, but he has 1 cent liability, and well, come to find out this other guy has 1 cent liability. Well, they're trying to find discerning reasons on why they should do business with somebody else. This is one of those discerning points that will separate you from your competition and get you away from the commoditization.
Yes.
And I think that the rising tide rises all ships. So it will force your competition to come up to where you are. And that's a position where you want to be in any industry, is to where you're forcing your competition to come up in credibility,
right,
in service, and you always want to be the person that everybody's trying to catch.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
I could see that as being very, very advantageous, and you should be able to grab that with your marketing department and really take hold of this. And it could take months, even years, for your competition to catch up to you.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
So fantastic. I appreciate that. And I'm big on technology and where are things going next.
Okay.
Where do you see this thing morph, and where do you see it evolving to next?
Well, within the United States, so our cargo program is called CTPAT. Other countries have similar programs as well. Europe, their program is called AEO. Canada has one, Partners in Protection. Singapore, Mexico just started theirs. It's called the NEEC. And so what's going to happen, and the road that we're headed down, which we're already seeing, is these programs from all these countries are going to start to merge together, so that instead of going to 2 or 3 different checkpoints, if your freight is traveling in those directions, they'll be recognized by other countries, which it's being called mutual recognition agreements, which is extremely important because the other countries are starting to mirror their cargo security programs to be just like our CTPAT program. So if you qualify for CTPAT, you will qualify for some of the other programs around the world. And that's going to help cut down on the amount of time, again, that your freight is held up for inspection when it's being moved internationally. And it's also going to show and demonstrate in other countries, especially where we have issues like religious riots or political things going on. It's going to ensure that your freight is that much more secure, so you're not, spending a ton of money on insurance and things like that. So it becomes extremely beneficial when all the countries come together on the same page.
And I don't think there are too many people that I'm aware of that would know that any better. Every time I talk to you, you're in a different country. You're always visiting somewhere else, and the contacts that you have across the world and the finger on the pulse of what's going on in the world is amazing with what you have. And so I really do. I respect your opinion on that, and I'm looking forward to seeing that come together, because we have to start understanding that and reciprocating between countries. We have to start working together if we're going to crack this nut, so to speak.
Absolutely, yes.
I see it as a significant threat, and within the companies, I want to get back to the corporate side, because that's really why you're on this show, is for the corporate side of things.
Mm-hmm.
On the corporate side, what does an executive do next? I mean, he's sitting here, he's watching this, and he says, well, I would really love to have that information. Where do I get that information? I know that you do some training, and you're also holding some events. Do you want to tell us, number one, about the training, and then number two, if I could talk about the event?
Absolutely. Well, from a training perspective, awareness is the key. That's where it always starts. So Customs has some great information on their website, the cbp.org website, about what CTPAT program is, what it entails, who qualifies for it, and how you go about doing that. Also, there are other CTPAT professionals, believe it or not, apart from myself, that do applications for you. Like I said, the application is the easy part, so just be aware of that. Once you go through the application process, then it's a matter of dealing with customs agents. I haven't had bad experiences, and I have dealt with quite a few of them. As long as you're transparent and honest and direct, it's a seamless path. If they start to see issues or encounter, maybe you're trying to hide things or not being upfront, that's when the issues come up.
Okay.
But you can always go to people like myself who consult. I know there's some attorneys' offices that deal in international trade that could possibly also offer that service. And of course, you can do the application yourself. It's not difficult. So rather than spending thousands of dollars, we can teach you how to do the application process, which is actually part of the conference that you're speaking about that will be coming up. But it is work, and if it's not something that you yourself can or want to take on, there are professionals out there that you can go to.
And like I said, the benefits are more than just waving the stars and stripes.
Yes.
The benefits are monetary. It can literally more than pay for itself.
Oh, absolutely.
And especially the corporate infiltration, folks, this is real. This is very real. Once again, I go back to our competitive intelligence with the information that we are able to collect from our side. If you look at those packages, it should scare you to death. The information that your employees will give out freely to somebody that calls up and asks.
Right.
It really should scare you to death. So I would highly recommend contacting Miriam and Empower and getting not only the certification, but getting that information that you can pass down through your organization so that you can protect your intellectual property, especially. You know how big I am on intellectual property and protecting that. Miriam, your event that's coming up.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that, who would want to attend, who that would apply to, the types of people that will be there?
Sure, absolutely. Currently, over the past few years, Customs has come up with a training program, and it is a CTPAT conference, which they put on an annual basis. The only problem with that is they only have space for 12,000 people, which means, and each company is allowed to take 2 people. So now you've narrowed that in half as far as the amount of companies that are able to participate. And then only if you're CTPAT certified. So that means that only that very small percentage is getting information, real-time information from Customs. And so the thought that I had was, well, there's a whole other segment of the entire population of businesses that isn't getting this information, they're not getting this training. And so it was my thought to put on a conference for them, just to get them the same information that the CTPAT conference would give. So it's the same thing. We're teaching you what type of risks are out there, what to look for, how to prepare for a customs audit, how to deal with customs officers, how to do the inspections that I was telling you on these trailers. All these things will help each company, I believe, and it will get them that much closer to their goal of being able to be CTPAT certified.
Okay. So the goal is to become CTPAT certified, and this helps on that trail to become. And then what types of people are going to be there? I know that you were going to have little breakout sessions to where you all get together and then you can go to choose from 3 different classes and go and learn, and then come back together and then go and learn from somebody else. What types of instructors are you going to have there?
We're going to have some of the top speakers in the industry in their particular field because there's actually 8 areas within the application process that you have to address. For example, physical security. Do you have proper lighting? Do you have locks on your doors and windows, that type of thing, which I know to most people you would think it's basic, but we just don't see enough of it around. We also have the container security. Are you inspecting your trailers, for instance? There's at least 7 to 8 different points in each topic. Human resources. Are you doing the background checks on your employees? Do you have process and procedures for terminating them? Like taking back your keys and things like that. Especially now that there's a higher incident rate where you have workplace violence, where people just, for whatever reason, go off the deep end and they come back into the workplace. We see this all the time on the news. So it helps not only from a cargo perspective, it just helps keep your employees safe, and it helps keep your community safe. But it is a 2-day seminar, like we were talking about, and there's going to be a total of 8 classes. Each class or each workshop addresses the different areas that Customs is interested in. And like I said, we're going to have speakers not only from the public sector, but we're also going to have them from the private sector. On the public sector side, we have people coming from the Department of Commerce, as well as Customs and Border Protection, possibly an FBI agent or 2. And then on the private sector, we've got people who are experts in their field. And so we're really giving you the up-to-date information, the latest and the greatest.
We appreciate it. You're bridging the gap. And it seems like a lot of times in business, we have regulation and we have the business.
Right.
And it seems like you're really doing a lot to bridge that gap and to help the business and the regulation come together. And to make this actually a profitable move instead of just, oh, another regulation that I have to comply with.
Yes.
So I mean, the American business owner right now is being slammed with so many different costs, with so many different regulations, that it's getting really overwhelming. I mean, I own a business as well, so I know how overwhelming it is. And I work with CEOs and CFOs and COOs every day that we cover these issues, and it's really refreshing to have somebody that's coming down that's teaching us how to actually not only take this and observe it to become a part of it, but to help to monetize it as well.
Yes, and you're right, because from a cost perspective, yes, I can see how it could get out of hand, especially if you don't have any processes or procedures in place. But the good thing about Empower that is not typically out there with other people is we've taken it a step further, and we've actually come up with some very creative ideas for how to cut down on some of those costs, which Customs loves. I mean, they know me in the industry because of the work that I've done, so they've actually recommended me to other major corporations to help them out with their programs.
Well, Miriam, why don't you tell me a little bit about the event that's coming up? I know that you were talking about the CT-PAT certification, and with some of the companies that are going to be watching this, they're going to be wondering, how do I learn about it? Well, the event, you're actually going to be instructing on that at the event, correct?
Yes, correct. It is a 2-day seminar. It's going to go on from 8 to about 4 or 5:30 in the afternoon. We're going to have a number of speakers over the 2 days, which will cover each of the elements of the CT-PAT program and what it is that they need to implement. So we'll have speakers from the public side, also from the private sector. So on the public side, we have Customs and Border Protection, we have Federal Bureau of Investigations, we also have the Department of Commerce. On the private side, we have a couple of attorneys coming to speak on different topics. We'll also have some experts in the field as they relate to either risk management or learning how to improve certain procedures or security practices within your organization. And the most exciting part is that we have an international panel. So we'll have at least one representative from some of the different countries such as Europe, possibly Africa, Canada, Mexico, and they'll be speaking on what the most common and current risks are whenever you're importing, exporting, or transporting freight within those countries. So I'm really excited about that.
That will be cool. And so my question there is, are both the private and the public, are they all going to be in with that panel as well and be able to hear that, or is it?
Yes, absolutely. They also have opportunities to ask questions. So we always encourage the audience to participate because we want it to be interactive. So anything that we might not have thought of, someone in the audience will, and that's how we will approach it.
Fantastic. So you're also going to have little breakout sessions, right?
Yes, absolutely. Each one of the breakout sessions, which there's a total of 8, will cover the topics, like I was saying, that are a requirement for CT-PAT. So over the course of the 2 days, you'll have complete information on what you need in order to be able to qualify for each of the topics, so that when you go to do your application, you'll know exactly what to put in your application so that you can pass it.
Fantastic. And then what's your price point going to be on, like, admission?
The price point is $400, and it's 2-day seminar. It includes your food, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll feed you. But the important thing is what you will take away from this course is that, number one, you'll be aware of all the threats that could possibly occur. And this is both for natural disasters as well as man-made events or terrorist events. But secondly, you'll know exactly the points that you need in order to be able to qualify for CT-PAT.
Okay. Easy enough. Looking forward to the event.
Thank you. Well, I'm hoping that it becomes a great success, and I'm hoping a lot of people get a lot of great information out of this.
Yeah, looking forward to September.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic, so you don't want to miss it.
I won't. So thank you very much, Miriam, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
Yeah, you're a professional, and we're very happy to have you on our side, on the corporate side, of course, and also on the government side. You truly are a credit to your industry, and we appreciate you making that bridge between business and government, where we can understand regulation, we can conform to it, and we can actually make money off it. That is a very cool combination that you're bringing to the table. So I wanted to thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Miriam Marsh, I'm Sam Sadler. Thank you.